G'day Space Engineers and welcome to the ultimate drone tutorial that you will most likely ever need. The multi-part series you'll be getting into, which should work on PC and or console, as it will have no mods, no scripts, no DLCs, nada of that. It'll only have base vanilla blocks, even though I do have a couple of quality of life mods installed. None of which actually have anything to do with you or this drone, which we will be building from scratch. As if I go into the terminal on this block and have a look at all of these orange names, which represent the blocks that are showing on the cargo drone itself, there's a lot of timer blocks and a lot of event controllers, some AI recorder blocks, remote controls, all that sorts of stuff and more. But if I go over to its trigger timer, the one we trigger or start for it to count down and trigger everything in its action block list, right here, you may notice it is very, very cluttered. This thing is so smart, it outsmarts me multiple times an episode throughout my survival story. Season 2 Dronely, if you don't know what it is, make sure you go and check it out, as it was a real thoroughfare through how we built this drone in its stages and everything like that. It has cruise control, it has the ability to flee, whether it fails on your home base's dock or its drilling platform's dock, if it gets shot at, if it sees an enemy within a certain radius, and a lot more. You may notice that it also has the hydrogen thrusters with the H2 tanks, obviously, a couple batteries. That is due, so it will work on any planet, surface, in between, off planet, and in space through comets, asteroids, space bases, whatever it may be, which was also seen in my Dronely Survival Season 2. I have a couple of things enabled, so it's completely survival that I'll be building this drone from scratch. And I've just got the creative mode tools on, as well as a couple other things to allow me easier access without having to like place down a block and then weld it on up nice and easy. So first things first, let's get stuck into it. Let's build up a small pad that allows us to transfer the large grid block we have in our hands over to the small grid blocks of the drone itself. So the base here with these cargo containers and the welders, that's large grid, but it allows us through a small connector to connect onto this large one right here. So how we do that is we block out and get rid of that middle one. Let's get on over to our second page and let's get an advanced rotor down right there. It'll place it with a large head that you may have to weld up, but I've got that creative mode tools on to allow us to just do this nice and simply. I do also have build vision, which allows you to name things much easier, as well as allowing me to add this small rotor head. So normally if you didn't have any mods in or that specifically installed, let's first get this on with some power. And I'm not talking about just a battery. I'd like to charge whatever is actually on this pad that we're building at the same time. So let's place down a reactor, since we don't have to worry about resources. Shift F10, scroll down the bottom, and let's add 100 uranium ingots to that reactor. So now it's powered, and we also have a little terminal that allows us to get into that advanced rotor. So there's that small rotor head option. You would click just there to add that small head once deleting the large grid. So we want to share its inertia tensor, and we want to lock its rotor so it will not be able to move in any way, shape or form as we're building this. Even if we're in creative tools, whatever it is, we still have to build up that small grid. That's awesome sauce right there. What I'm planning on doing is, since we will need to transfer resources from our base into the drone or whatever grid we're building on top of it, it needs to have the conveyor ports of this large grid or the advanced rotor itself. So let's build it on up and get that onto there-ish. I think that should be okay. I might get a quick one of those just in case we need to build something off it and place that up a little higher. So let's place one of those and get a connector built onto the side of it. That's the first block we need to place whenever we're building a drone, because it's much easier for the drone to actually come up over the top of the connector itself and then just fly straight down onto the connector with its AI recorder block. You can do it in any other sorts of way, like have the connector on the rear of it, on the top of it, but obviously the docking procedure seen in this video may slightly differ, obviously. So what we want to now is we want to transfer anything we can pull out of the bottom of the connector through this little bit into a large port you see here. So we've got a large port, or we have a small port that we see here. So let's see if we can get into the cargo containers. And an easy way to say it is if the large port that we see just there is connected on through that, you would be able to transfer any sorts of resources through this one right here, like missiles, large steel plates, interior plates, all that sorts of stuff, where if it were connected on the side of it, so you see the small little conveyor port there, if that was connected on through that, you would be able to get any component, as I said, through this right here into this container only. Only some sorts of ammo, ores, and different components will actually go through this small conveyor port, including any of your hydrogen, and just with the blocks connected together, will power be transferred through. So I'm actually possibly going to go with this sort of thing to begin with. So if we do want to have the ability to carry or transfer or transport some large components, we still have that ability to do so. But this will be a cargo drone specifically to transfer ores from your drilling platform and back. So what we need to do now is we need to get some thrusters on here somehow. And what I'm thinking of doing is if I delete that one there and that one there and orient them slightly different, so the larger ports are on the sides like this, I can do the same thing, but I can go to button 7, I think it was. Yes, it is. That one right there. So this block here has got a large conveyor port on the back of it and many small ones on the side of it. So I want to be able to place some hydrogen thrusters down, and that's going to allow us to do that rather nicely and easily like that. So let's place those on just like so. Excellent. So now we've got plenty of spots that we can place some thrusters, and what we can do is possibly just do something along the lines of this to give us the ability to go up, down, left, right, forwards, and backwards, all 6 directions that a drone will need to have to actually work correctly. So instead of just coming out to the sides, we now have the ability to go up and down and all that sorts of good jazz just like that. So let's just continue that on like so. And the basics for any drone to function is simply put, you need a trigger timer to tell the drone when to go and get resources. One, to know when it's at your drilling platform and to load. A third timer to tell it when it's actually full of cargo through an event controller we'll add very soon, and when to return home. So that's that RTB timer number 3 there. And the final timer you'll need is 1 to actually dock at your home base and tell the drone itself that it needs to unload. So to summarize, we've got a load timer, an unload timer, a trigger timer, and an RTB timer. That's just the way it works. So let's get on to those thrusters. If we can get it nice and simply, we'll just place some really simple small ones just like so, and we'll need to place some tanks somewhere along here as well. So we need to not only cancel out the gravity on any planet we're in, unless you're in space, then don't worry, but we need to have more downwards thrusters to cancel out the gravity and the drone's weight and the drone's cargo itself. It's a trifecta you'll need to worry about, and that's just the way it will work. So we need to get some thrusters going forwards, so pushing this thing forwards. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll need possibly some turning back, so let's get maybe 2 on that side just for now. I think might be okay, and 2 on that side. So that's left, right, forward, and the down option. So now we need just a couple on the upwards, so let's get 1 and 2. With the best thing with Space Engineers is it does not matter where your thrusters are placed, it will still have an overall effect evenly to push your drone downwards evenly. So what I mean by that is, obviously I've got the 2 downwards thrusters here. It will still push the nose of it down as if this thruster right here was here. It would have the exact same physics or realistic effect as if that was there compared to them both being here. I hope that makes sense. So we'll just leave that as is. Next thing all, we need to get that last orientation. That's the forward. So let's get 2 more thrusters, possibly right about there. We have 4 backwards. We want 4 forwards. So it has the ability to speed up and slow down at the same sort of speeds. That's awesome right there. So now we need to get some tanks. We need to get some fuel. So normally you could possibly get a large one, but I think that might just be a little bit too jank. I'm going to try and see if I can squeeze in as many of these small ones as I possibly can. So let's just see if we can go 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. Should be able to get, probably pushing it there a little bit. If I get that there, it'll only able to connect to 2 of them. But no, I won't do that. I won't do that. That would be quite silly. That would be quite silly indeed. And if I place them there, it has the ability to maybe block the connector. So try not to place anything too much underneath. Plus, I would like to use this conveyor in the future episodes to place down the ability to fill its separated little small cargo to fill up with ammo from your base, to allow your drilling platform to automatically pull any ammo from this drone's separated container that would be on its own sort of piping system from this connector itself, or from that conveyor port right there itself. We've got 6 of those. I think much more is needed in terms of fuel. So why don't we just get the hunky-dory and just place 1 there, 1, and we'll make sure the ports are lining up, 1 there and 1 there. So let's connect these ones up by probably getting it to go like so, and let's get a T-junction. I'm trying not to use conveyor ports or conveyor junctions as much as possible because they do lag things out a lot. So it looks like I'll need to get 1 there anyway. That's fine. Now that should all start filling up eventually once we get the ability to fill this up when it gets some tanks on the base itself in just a moment. So there we go. So now all of those should be connected up through everything needed. Yep, that's good. So now we need to get onto here and get a nice little string of pipes just over here, and let's get an O2 generator, which I always forget I need to place a couple more of these blocks like this so we can get that placed on like so. Here we go. Because strangely, if I look at the other side of it, you see the conveyor ports are on either side of it, but it wants to place it from the middle of the blocks. So there's that. That should be good. I'll get a cargo container. Since it is survival, this is what you'd need to do. Let's get another one of these. If I can possibly squeeze it onto the sides. Like so, just so it fills it up much faster. And then let's put ice in here, and let's just spam that so it fills it up. Oh, there we go. The thruster's just turned on. It just got power. THR off. Oh, there we go. I can hear myself think now. Well, at least we know that they're full and they are now filling up. So while we're building everything up, naming the blocks, placing all the different programming stuff very quickly to get things done, they will then fill up. I know it doesn't look like much, and obviously underneath, it doesn't matter too much what it looks like. You can always armor it up afterwards. So let's get it on going. Let's get some things named. Let's go trigger. We'll get an RTB, and then we'll get a load timer and an unload timer. There we go. Cool. So we need to go into all of this, and let's see if we can hide a few things and make some groups. So all the thrusters, thruster, I always do that. Thruster. There we go. Drone thrusters. I do not want to show them in there. Cargo container. Let's just quickly name this one here as base, so there's no confusion later on. Any other cargo containers not named base, 1, 2, and 3, are the ones on our drone itself. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. So all the drone tanks, drone H2 tanks, show block and terminal, no thank you. Those are the ones on the base. These are the cargo containers. I might as well, oh, not that one. Show block and terminal, no thank you. No, I don't want to show that in terminal either. And let's hide that one as well. So excellent. So trigger, what do we want the drone to do when we trigger this timer? We want it to disconnect from the actual docking connector itself when it's at your base, and we want it to tell it to trigger its AI blocks and its flight functionality, which is very simply put, we need to add now. So what we need to do is we need to get one AI flight move, and that can be placed practically anywhere you want to. We need to get an AI recorder block, and it's very important that this block not only goes in the correct orientation, but also directly over and in the middle of your docking connector. It is just much easier for it to be able to have that, even though when you use this AI recorder block, it will have the functionality of a beacon's reference point that it will always be able to connect almost no matter where you place this block itself. But for the simplicity of this episode, I'm just going to place it right above and in the middle of that connector itself. So not only do we need one to tell it to connect onto the drilling platform, but we need to get another one to tell it to dock onto your connector at your home base. So two just there, nice and simply. And let's go into the drone's terminal and let's name them to home, to drill. Let's just name it to drill or whatever you want it to be, pretty much. So this AI recorder is its docking at the home base. This one here is obviously the docking at the drill itself. So what we need to do is just go into all three of these blocks, highlight all three of them or whatever you want, and just make sure they're all off with their AI behaviors and all that sorts of things. So let's go into the AI flight and let's just specify how we want this drone to fly. So we don't want collision avoidance on. It just causes way too many problems in game of Space Engineers, and it's just not worth it. It's just easier to place a couple more waypoints or GPSs around the mountain or around an obstacle of your base, whatever it may be, than to worry about this screwing things up. Precision mode must be on. It is just the most stable I have found it to be. That's just the way it is. So the speed limit, we can get this up to maybe 40, something a little slowish to start off with, and that should be a-okay. The minimum altitude, we want it to possibly just stay at default for now. We want it to align to P gravity because we're on per tam right now, but we don't want it to angle at all. We just want it to stay nice and flat so the connector is above the actual surface of the planet itself. We just want it to be nice and flat above the planet at all times. That's just the most stable, and we can work our way upwards from here. There's nothing really more we can add to this, and that's another mod I have to enable me to name many blocks at once. So if I highlight more than one, I can just do C drone with a space at the end, and I can just do prefix. So now all of these blocks are named nice and easy, or I can even just go ahead and reset them all. But that means it would reset it to just the words timer block, and it would delete the load, RTB, timer, and unload. So let's just leave it as is, and let's get stuck into how this is going to work. So all of these blocks are all off, and there's nothing more we can just add to these at the moment. So let's get into the trigger. When we want it to trigger this timer, when we want it to get the resources and fly to the drill itself, we want it to unlock from the connector itself, turn its AI flight move on, and we need to tell it to start the docking procedure on the way to the drill. So it's going to turn that block on as well. So we've got both of those on. We need to turn the AI behavior on the flight, and you can either do the play on off or the AI behavior on. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mix of both of them. So it's going to do the AI on and the play function at the same time. So we've turned both of those AI blocks on, leaving the other one completely off, as only one can be operated at one time. Turns them both on, turns both of the AI behaviors on, as well as that little extra function to play what sort of thing we are going to be laying out through its waypoints. The way we need to do that is we need to have a small drilling platform connector for it to go to and actually place its things up nice and easy. So I'm going to get a large cargo, if I can get it. 7. There we go. I would like a conveyor junction, and the reason why I'm doing this is so I can get a few things placed on later on. So I'm going to get a few conveyors like that, raise it up a smidge, and I'm going to get a simple connector on the top of that. So there we go. There's our drilling platform, nice and easy. Come on back over here. How are we going on fuel? 97%. Absolutely perfect. So the way we need to be able to get in control of this drone is if we try and get in control of it now, there's just nothing that actually really exists. The game doesn't know it's really there because there's no antenna. There's no remote block for you to get in control of it. Absolutely nothing. So let's just place an easy remote control in the correct orientation with its nose pointing at the front of the drone. The rear of it placing right there. It now has the ability to fly, but we need to get in connection with it. So let's get a really simple antenna and just place it on the back. So now when we go into this one right here, we'll have a small grid 4652, or we can just go to remote access, get a nice easy list, and we can then control it. But when we get in control, we won't be able to see anywhere we're going. So it's easy to get possibly a camera. Just get this like here. I'm going to place it anywhere I wish on the front, and then I'm going to place one down the bottom. So let's get this renamed so we know which one's which in the terminal. And front. Excellent. Cool. So now we go into here. We go into the remote control on the drone itself. We get the collision avoidance off. We get the precision mode on, like always. The assigned camera, we want it to do the front one. So every time we get in control of this drone, it will automatically put our player's field of view using this camera at the front. The flight mode, it will need to be on the circle orientation, so it does not forget any of its GPS waypoints we place here later on in the future. It does have a cruise control function, which we will be using the remote control specifically for in the future. So this isn't going to be used at all, apart from us being able to control it. So I'm going to do Shift F5. I'm going to quickly save the game, so any problems we have from now, we can also just return the save back to where we were. I'm also noticing we did miss out on a couple things that I haven't added to it. It needs a couple batteries. Even though it has the hydrogen thrusters, the H2 tanks, the timers, the remote control, all that sorts of stuff, and the antenna do need power themselves. So you don't need a lot of power. I'm probably going to place just 4 batteries on it for now. It does spawn in with 30% power, but I'm hopefully thinking that should be enough to get us what we want to do. So I'm going to place another Shift F5 right there, and I'm now going to disconnect this drone from the base, and hopefully, oh, let's turn the thrusters on before I forget. Stockpile off, drone thrusters on, and we got forwards, backwards, left, right, down, and up. So that's all of them. We also need gyro. Before I forget, just going through my mental checklist. 1 and 2, and maybe I'll get another sneaky one right there, maybe 3. That should be good. All right, let's do another quick save before I forget, and that should be everything I'm hoping. Let's disconnect that. Control Z while looking at it. You might notice the dampeners are now set to auto. Remote access and control. So now, if we press F, we are now in control of the drone. Let's go into the drone's G menu and just add that front camera to view and that bottom camera to view. So now when we exit out of that, we press button 1, we can get the nice camera. So button 2 gives us that bottom one, aka the docking camera. So look, as simple as this. From here, we go to the connector and we tell it to switch lock. And as an additional bonus, we just tell the block to toggle block on or off. So front camera, bottom camera, switch lock of the drone's connector, and then toggle on or off. Fantastic. So button 3 will just allow us to then connect on to here nice and easy. So now we shouldn't be using any hydrogen as the drone is connected to a static grid nice and easy. So since we now have the ability to control everything, we need to place the waypoints used to dock to each connector. So what we need to do is, since we're still dampened to the drone itself, let's get back into control of it. Button 3 to disconnect, and what we need to do is just fly directly above the connector, not too high, shortly after connecting to it, so it's directly above itself. So from here, we'll go into the G menu, go over to the AI recorder blocks, and we want to place down over here, add manual waypoint. So add this waypoint will allow us to, every time we press the button, add a waypoint specifically to that AI recorder block. We'll do the same one or same thing to the other one and just add that waypoint. So we've got one for the to drill on button 8 and one to home on button 9. So we're going to the drill. Let's press button 8 where we are now. Fly on down to the bottom of the connector. Wait for it to connect on up. Let's go into the G menu again. Go into the groups. Go over and turn and add the toggle block on and off to the drone thrusters itself. So when we turn the thrusters off, we will be directly on that connector evenly all the way around. That's what we want. So let's get back in control of the drone and let's press button 8 our last time. that's where we want it to connect. Fantastic. Let's turn our thrusters back on and let's now do, oh, hello, the exact same thing over here. So I'm going to get a quick thing. I'm going to go and copy this and I'm going to paste that probably just about here. I think that should be good. Let's go on to this one again. Remote access, control, camera down. Let's go over to it. Let's fly on down. Make sure you connect onto it first so it's nice and flat and even. Lock, unlock, and then fly up slightly to place the first waypoint. So since we're on our way back to the home base, let's press button 9. So 1 waypoint there on that second recorder block. Let's fly on down nice and evenly. Let's turn those thrusters off again so we go onto the connector as close as possible and place that second waypoint with button 9 again. Might as well. Let's button 3 to lock onto the connector itself, and I'm going to do very similar thing to get this to fill back up once more. So let's just get this over here and let's get a little bit of ice placed in it. Ice, there we go. It will be using the drone's power, so I'm just going to plonk a battery, since any battery we place in the creative mode tools on spawns in with about 30% power itself, so that should easily have enough power to juice that up. Now our tanks should be filling back up, so next time we do an actual test in just a second, things won't actually just fall out of the sky randomly. So let's place or do another quick save since we've done that and we've placed all those waypoints. So the one to the drill, the one above the connector, and the one on the connector itself. It's very simply, we just want it to go above the connector, do nothing for now, fly down onto the connector, and we want it to trigger the load timer, which is that one right there. So let's just tell it to trigger that load timer when it gets to that second waypoint, just above that drilling platform's connector right there. That's all we really need it to do. Once it does that, and once that load timer is triggered, we want it to get it onto 1 second. Even though the timer is being triggered instantly and not being started, you may have better options starting the timer when it's on the connector. But for now, let's just leave it as trigger. And when it gets to that connector, let's see if we can name this one here as the drone so we know which one's which. Let's go back into the load timer. We want it to we want it to lock that drone connector nice and easy. So when it gets there, it'll lock the connector, and we want it to turn off those drone thrusters nice and easy, so it will actually guarantee to be on the connector itself. So once it gets there, it should then fill up nice and easy. So once it's then connected on there, we need to tell the drone when it is actually full. The way we can do that is if we get an event controller anywhere on this drone itself. Let's get that one right there, nice and easy. Go into the thing itself. We're looking at the event control cargo fill percentage, and when it is equal or greater than 99.9%, we want it to trigger something. If it is not above 99.9, that's what the box will happen. That's what it will trigger. But when it is above 99.9, oh, wrong button. When it is above 99.9%, we want it to trigger the RTB timer, telling the drone that it is full, and to flick over that the recorder AI blocks to tell it to go home nice and simply. So what do we want it to do with this RTB timer? Well, we want it to tell it to go home. So we need to unlock the drone from the drilling platform, turn the thrusters back on since we turned them off on the last one. We want to make sure that this block is off, telling it to go to the drill. And we want the new AI recorder block to going home to be turned on, the AI behavior on, and to be played like the other one. So only one of these recorder blocks can be on at one time, and it's much easier having this one guaranteeing to be off before switching it over nice and easy. So now that we're telling it to go back home after 1 second, since we're just triggering it straight away, we need to tell it to unload. So this is the one it would happen at your home bases dock. So using this recorder, it goes to above where it is right now at the home bases dock, and then it goes right where it is this second, right on the connector. When it gets there, we want it to unload. Trigger that timer nice and easy, and that timer is simply put going to tell it to lock onto that one. Oh, yep, is going to lock on. This is, oh, that's the trigger. I pressed the wrong button. It's going to unlock, sorry, it's going to lock onto the connector it is right now, and it's going to turn off every single one of these blocks, as well as all of their AI behaviors. I don't want any of them to be on, nothing whatsoever. It can go ahead and also turn its drone thrusters off and tell the hydrogen tanks to be on stockpile so they fill up much faster. But having that, when we trigger it, knowing that its thrusters and all that will be off, we need to turn the stockpile back off and the thrusters to be on. So I don't think the tanks are on stockpile now. No, they are on it now. So if it was returned back from base, this unload timer will have its drone thrusters to turn off and those tanks to be on stockpile, which they are now. Drone thrusters are off and the hydrogen tanks are on stockpile. They will always need to have their blocks on. It's just the way it is, but stockpile allows them to be refilled much faster, being shown by that blue light. If they're not on stockpile, and I can just turn that off very quickly, that's when that light turns green. So let's just fix that back again. Thank you, Build Vision. I love that mod, one of my absolute favorites. So what we want it to do is when it triggers, let's just go through the timers. We want it to unlock, turn on the proper recorder block, telling it to go to the drill, turn off its stockpile, and turn on its drone thrusters. Fantastic. When it flies on over to the drill, using this AI recorder, it goes above the connector, down onto the drilling platform's connector, and it triggers that load timer, this one right here. From here, it will then lock onto the connector of your drill and turn off its drone thrusters. Very simply, once the event controller realizes that all three of these connectors, 1, 2, 3, want those ones. So once all three of these cargo containers on the drone are full with the AND gate, it will then tell it to trigger that RTB timer. If it is not above 99.9%, do absolutely nothing, and that's what that box represents right there. So when it is above 99, trigger that RTB timer. And what's that RTB timer going to tell the drone to do? It's going to tell it to unlock from the drilling platform, turn its drone thrusters back on, turn off the AI recorders to drill block, and it's going to turn the other AI recorder, telling it to go home. Fantastic. Using that to home AI recorder block, it's going to fly above the home bases connector and then right down onto where it is right this second. When it gets there, it's going to trigger the unload timer nice and easy, which is going to lock the drone to your bases connector, turn off all of the functionalities of the AI recorders, the AI flights, as well as turning the drone thrusters off, and to turn the stockpile on of those hydrogen tanks. That, as far as I'm aware, should be a functioning drone. So let's do a quick shift F5. Get the button panel nice and simply, and let's just plonk it anywhere we can. That there sounds pretty good. Let's get the trigger function and let's tell it to start on that right there. So let's do another quick save. Let's see how this works. Test number 1, about 30-40 minutes into the recording, so roughly. So let's lock onto the drone. It should then fly on over above the connector, and if I can, on the next trigger in a second, I'll activate those waypoints to be shown. Should fly straight down onto the connector, turn its drone thrusters off. It did not lock. Interesting. Okay, so right there is where I think I may need to change a few things. So let's trigger its RTB timer, telling it to go home, drone, you're drunk, go home. We will need to change one specific thing. So instead of when it gets to that second waypoint above each connector right now, I'm going to tell it to trigger, I'm going to tell it to start those timers instead of triggering them. So let's go here, set up action, and let's start that load timer when it gets to the drilling platform, and then start that unload timer when it gets back. So that kind of did work a little bit hunky-dory, but let's try that again. Let's make sure we've still got that ability. Yes, we do. Let's do another quick Shift F5. Test 2, go. All right, so when it gets over there, I might need to actually increase the time on those things right there. 2 seconds on that. So after 2 seconds, when it gets to that waypoint, it'll trigger that timer. 1, 2, yeah, there we go, perfect. So now the drone's event controller is waiting for all 3 of these cargo containers on the drone to be above 99.9% cargo. So what I'm planning on doing is, let's just go into here. Let's actually, I'll get a sorter if I can, conveyor sorter. 1 there, and button 5. Let's just get a large cargo container. Let's just fill it up with lots and lots of cobalt ore. Go into this sorter right here. Let's tell it to sort out any ore, including that cobalt ore, in the white list, and tell it to drain all of that through from that connector all the way through and up and into our drone. So now these should eventually start filling up very fast. There we go. Starting to fill up. Where's that event controller? We might need to turn it off, then back on again. It's somewhat figuring itself out. Event controllers, once triggered on the first time, can be a little weird, but once this gets to 100% or above 99.9, there we go, fantastic. It should work out fantastically. Oh, it's a little heavy, I'll say that much. It's still very good on fuel, so it should more than happy to do this. Let's go into its unload timer and tell it after 2 seconds, the same as that one, to then trigger up when it gets to that second waypoint. Coming on down nice and slowly at no more than like 40 kilometers or so. It's 40 meters a second. There we go. And connect. Turns the thrusters off, all the AI blocks, turns them on stockpile. Absolutely fantastic right there. That is completely what we want right there. So I'm going to do a quick Shift F5. And unfortunately, you're going to have to wait till the next episode. Let me know what I should add next. Should I add a flee functionality or the ability to cruise and save much more fuel depending how far away your drilling platform is? Let me know in the comments. I love reading them all. I love replying to them all. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz. And stay sharp till next time as always. See ya.